Finance and commerce have ruled the world in recent ages. So let me explain you what is a big problem whenever you deal with commerce, especially with exports. So Italy is a large manufacturing country, so it's very likely that you produce stuff in Italy and you sell it abroad. So what happens? Well, it happens that you pay VAT on purchases and you do not charge VAT on outputs, on sales. So you will find yourself with a chronic VAT credit. Of course, a credit can be refunded and can be offset against other taxes, but still it creates a little bit of a problem because you advance VAT today and you can get VAT back either quarterly or annually, depending on certain conditions. So it's not that easy to get a VAT refund, and if the refund exceeds 30,000 euros, your accountant has to put the signature on the return, verifying that values are correct, and also being liable in case of wrongful declaration. Which means that if your accountant signs that and the VAT refund is not exactly that amount, he or she is liable to pay heavy fines. So it's not nice. It's not a good way to do business. It's a cash crunch because you advance money and possibly you get it back at a later date with a big question mark. Is it gonna happen? And also depends on the local office administering that. It might be a short time, it might also be a long time. So is there any way to go around that? Yes, there is. Because if you are a habitual exporter, which means that more than 10% of your revenues are made without VAT, which means that you sell it abroad, you can qualify for a program that you can request your supplier to sell you goods without charging VAT, which is actually great. So think about that. Instead of paying VAT to your supplier the supplier needs to pay the government back, basically you get a zero-rated supply, and that's from Italy, not from abroad. So how do you do that? Well, you need to file a return. You need to send a communication to the tax office saying that you will request your supplier to issue the invoice without VAT. But how much VAT can you exclude? Well, first of all, 10% of your business must be made abroad. And second, you can disallow 100% of your non-taxable sales, non-VAT sales, which means that if you made 70,000 euros of sales without VAT abroad, you can buy 70,000 euros of supplies without paying any VAT. Now, you cannot do that in the first year because the first year of trade, you do not have last year's results. So in the first year of trade, you are required to pay VAT and get a refund or claim a compensation offsetting against other taxes. But also this regime is not very favorable if your business is increasing. Because think about that, if 1 year you had 70,000 of sale, the next year you buy 70,000 euros of goods without paying any VAT. However, your business skyrocketed and now your foreign sales are 200,000. So in that case, you still, on the following year, you get a 200,000 qualifying non-VAT expenditure on supplies. So you're still likely to have a certain VAT credit. However, this is oftentimes reduced. And also another consideration to make, another thing to consider is that do you end up in a VAT credit or not? Because oftentimes you might export a lot, but you still might be required to pay VAT because your Italian business will have large VAT. So in that sense, it is not useful because that regime only makes sense if you do not pay VAT, if you are always on credit, if you credit VAT, if you are owed money, not if you pay money. And of course, there is a slight problem that it creates a little bit more bureaucracy because you have to file more returns and you must make sure not to exceed the exempt supplies, otherwise fines applies, but it's still better than claiming a refund once a year. At least on your finances it looks way better because you do not have credit and you do not advance money to the government.